waiver wire. It's not the prettiest, but you know what? We got to dance with someone because there's a lot of injuries and there's a lot of roster spots that need to be filled, starting spots that need to be filled. And with how wonky and crazy fantasy football is right now, we don't even know who's going to be good week to week. We don't even, so just go out and find the guys that are scoring points right now. And there's plenty of those out on the waiver wire. So what we decided to do here is instead of listing where we go through like 17 or 20 different waiver wire people, and then honestly, commenters still complain that guy's not available in my league. I'm in the 1%. What we're doing here is we're actually going to draft these players that are available on the waiver wire. And what we're going to do is we're going to give a little bit of something for everyone. This kind of shows our priority, how bad do we want these players? What we're going to do is for our picks here, Dave, you're going to pick first. And in round one, we're doing players that are available in 50% of leagues or more. Round two, it'll be 60% or more. Round three, 70% or more. And then the fourth round will be 80% or more leagues. All right. So Dave, why don't you kick us off? Who is your waiver wire priority that is available in 50+% of leagues?
Braelon Allen is available in 54.2% of leagues right now. And I talked about it at the opening of the show, all the things that we were so confident about in the offseason. We were confident that Breece Hall would just have a stranglehold on the running back opportunities for the New York Jets. And here's Braelon Allen carving out a bigger role every single week. His snaps, his touches, and his yards have gone up each of his first 3 weeks in the league. He's in a timeshare with Breece Hall right now, which gives him a little bit of standalone value. This is a guy as we are approaching bye weeks. You might be able to put Braelon Allen in your flex spot and get some standalone value there. Obviously, there's huge upside if something were to happen to Breece. Like we have seen the way that this Jets offense looks. Aaron Rodgers just wants to check down, get the ball in his playmaker's hands, and a lot of those passes would go Braelon Allen's way. They already are, but if something happens to Breece, we're looking at 4 to 8 targets per game going Allen's way. So this is a guy who was viewed by a lot of people as an elite prospect coming out of college and then didn't have the best day at the combine, slid in the draft a little bit, but landed in a great landing spot, is getting immediate usage, through the first few games of his rookie season. So Braelon Allen is one of those guys right now, still available in over 50% of leagues. He might not be available in yours, but if he is, he's the type of guy that I'm okay, dropping 30, 40, maybe even 50% on if I'm hurting at the running back position, because you're getting a little bit of standalone value and a ton of upside.
And so it actually depends too. Like in different leagues, what I was looking at was Braelon Allen being available in over 60% of leagues. So that's a guy I think you could even we could have taken later and talked about later. But Braelon Allen is one of those guys that, like you said, Dave, and I don't want to keep beating a dead horse on this point, is that the contingent upside is absolutely there. But we're already seeing it now where he's scoring touchdowns and he looks good. This does not look like the same Braelon Allen that we saw in college where he was a bit bigger, a bit slower, avoiding contact. This guy looks like he shot out of a cannon every single time. Like the Jets offense actually looks like
And has some physicality that we didn't see the last couple of years in college either, where he's trucking through defenders, has more speed than he had in college. It's like we saw this breakout when he was, I want to say like 19 years old. Is that how young he was? I know he was like ridiculously young his freshman year when he kind of came onto the scene, and then had been disappointing in the following years. But now, he looks like the same player that he did 3 years ago when we were all just drooling over him as a prospect.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a good one. I'm going to go with a running back as well here. I'm going to go with Bucky Irving, running back for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, who's available in 56% of leagues. And a lot of people, I'm sure, picked him up before the season, and I'm sure a lot of people picked him up after week one. But then there's also a lot of leagues where he ended up getting dropped. And we do that because we're super impatient, and we just kind of kept saying, well, eventually it's going to be Rachaad White week. And that's really hard to say, by the way, Rachaad White week. And it wasn't. It wasn't. We still end up getting Bucky Irving coming out here, leads the Buccaneers in carries. Now, there's still plenty of snaps that are being utilized for Rachaad White, and I'm looking at it right here. Rachaad White was still out on the field for 42 of 57 snaps. Bucky Irving only out there for 18 of the 57 snaps, but Bucky Irving got 12 opportunities on his 18 snaps. Basically, when he is in the game, he is being used. And so I do expect that role to grow. And that's what you end up seeing oftentimes, right? Is when the role is not big, but players are making the most of their smaller role, that role continues to grow. Rachaad White's been one of the worst running backs in terms of efficiency over the last few years when we talk about rushing, right? And a lot of people look at the fantasy points, the receptions he's been able to total up, and it's made him one of these guys that we absolutely love for fantasy football. But Bucky Irving is a guy who could actually just take over this backfield. He does have the same kind of receiving prowess. He's not as big as Rachaad White, but right now he's showing that he's been better on the ground, Dave. And Well, I'm going to ask you this. In fantasy, who do you think is ranked? Where do you think Rachaad White ranks amongst fantasy running backs in half PPR?
I'm gonna guess like around RB 28, RB 32, somewhere in that range. It hasn't been great.
Rachaad White is running back 30 right
Yeah.
now.
Wow, I nailed
And
that one.
Bucky Irving is running back 32.
Yeah.
So to be nearly at the exact same spot in fantasy while having basically a third of the role on the offense, I'm excited to see what Bucky Irving can do going forward. And this isn't one of those things where, like a Jauan Jennings, for example, who we both really like, but we know Deebo Samuel's coming back at some point. We know at some point Brandon Ayuk breaks out. Bucky Irving is a guy who could just take over a role from Rachaad White. So that's who I'm going to go with here.
Yeah, I don't have a ton to add. I think that he is a really, really good football player. Um, Obviously, we see this a lot where the RB2 is the more efficient guy, hoping that he can carve out a role. The thing that frightens me a little bit is that we've just seen in the first 3 weeks, the snap shares have not budged whatsoever. It was 70% in week one for Rachaad White, 71% in week two, 70% in week three. So I think it's absolutely worth it. And we talked about Bucky Irving. I forget if it was after week one or after week two, but we talked about him on one of these waiver shows, and he's definitely worth picking up because Rachaad White has just been terrible now. Last year and this year, he does some good things in pass pro and in the passing game, but as a rusher, he's terrible. And I think it's only a matter of time before Bucky Irving takes over some of that early down work.
Yeah. And I know you're saying like the snap share is not moving. At some point, it has to. Like there's no way that this guy keeps going out there out producing Rachaad White on the ground, and they just say, "Nah, we want to keep being bad at running the ball and not changing this." I mean, I see your face. I see your smudge
They,
face
they
right
did
now.
it last
I
year.
mean,
They did it last year. Rachaad
but
White
there
was
was
the
no one
worst,
else.
least
But there
efficient
was
running back.
but
Yeah.
there was not a backup that was running better than him. Like now, there's a
Right.
very obvious other player who's running better than him. There's that smudgeness, Dave. Go on to your
Listen,
next pick,
no,
round
I,
two
I,
here.
I completely, I'm buying what you're selling, Alfredo. I just, once bitten, twice shy, falling for that younger, more efficient running back, waiting for him to take over as the lead back. It's just one of those things that we always hope for, and it does happen occasionally. But yeah, I'm with you. Bucky Irving is definitely worth a stash. All right, so now we're down to the 60% or more rostered, right?
Correct.
All right, got a few guys I can go with
Available
here.
in 60%
Yeah,
or more.
available in 60%. Wan'Dale Robinson, by my approximation, is available in 67.4% of leagues. And he's averaging 8 targets per game. He's being targeted on 26% of his routes. And we know the kind of routes that Wan'Dale Robinson runs. He's not going to be getting deep downfield. He's not going to be pulling, target depth or anything like that. But he is like a running back when he gets the ball in his hands. And they are going to manufacture short touches to get the ball in his hands. I think the most surprising thing is that this Giants offense looks formidable all of a sudden. It's crazy how Daniel Jones suddenly, when he gets a guy that could just go up and make plays, everything else in the offense starts to hum a little bit as well. I mean, he had one throw yesterday that was terrible, that he threw it in a defender's hands, and Malik Neighbors just reached over the top of the defender and said, "Nope, that ball's mine." And that is a turnover worthy play that instead was almost a 40-yard reception. And that's the way that things just start falling into place when you have an alpha like Malik Neighbors. So he's the very clear wide receiver one here, but Wan'Dale Robinson is the very clear wide receiver two. Where Malik Neighbors is doing a lot more of his stuff downfield. That does open up some of the underneath stuff for Wan'Dale Robinson. So he scored a touchdown this year. He's getting targeted on a lot of his routes. Probably not a guy that you are super fired up about putting into your lineup, but injuries have been hitting like crazy. As I said earlier, bye weeks are almost here, and having those guys that you can plug in as flex plays during bye weeks and injuries helps a lot. And Wan'Dale Robinson might not give you the highest ceiling, but he gives you a pretty reasonable floor with that target volume. So still available in a lot of leagues. I don't mind picking up Wan'Dale Robinson this week.
All right, let's do this. I am buying in on the Sam Darnold hype. He is locked in right now, leading the NFL in passing touchdowns. This Minnesota Vikings offense looks really good. The whole team looks really good, by the way. The defense is absolutely. Brian Flores may be a bully, but my God, is he a really good defensive coordinator? Holy smokes. This Vikings team, I mean, they look fantastic, and they're doing it without some of their best players. They're doing this on offense without TJ Hawkinson being there, without Jordan Addison being there. We're watching an offense where Sam Darnold is throwing the ball to Jalen Naylor and Johnny Munt, and that's what's winning games. Granted, Justin Jefferson is out there being Justin Jefferson, but Sam Darnold, the reason I want to go out and pick him up is because I think that what we can do here, Dave, is you can go out and start to trade some of these quarterbacks that still have some name value. I know that there's a lot of us where we're going to sit around and, you talk about a lot of the tropes that happen in fantasy football where we wait for certain players to break out and to do this and to do that, and we hold on to the draft value so much. At what point are we holding on to the bag a little too long? Right? Like, at what point can you maybe just trade a CJ Stroud right now because he still has that name value, even though you and I figured we weren't going to see that crazy fantasy value from him? I would look at this as an opportunity to be able to trade a guy like a CJ Stroud to the Nico Collins owner or to someone else and maybe get one of these quarterbacks that really aren't showing that they are a top 8 in fantasy, but they've got the name value. There's still some of that draft holdover. Sam Darnold has been the number 2 quarterback in fantasy football right now, and that's without his top weapons. I have a full trust right now in Kevin O'Connell and this Vikings offense. My hope and dream is that it only gets better for him. Plus, we got a revenge game coming up soon against the Jets, and I'm really excited to see that.
Yeah, I mean, every single year it feels like there's kind of like a theme to the NFL season. And this one, the theme seems to be that coaching matters because we are seeing Justin Fields look better in Pittsburgh than he ever looked in Chicago. We're seeing Sam Darnold look better than he has ever looked in any of his teams. We saw it last year with Baker Mayfield having his resurgence down in Tampa Bay. And now we're seeing it on a much bigger scale with more players. And it's impossible to ignore how good Sam Darnold has looked. Like, we always knew he had the tools. He is a big guy with a cannon for an arm. He's got some mobility, and it's always kind of been struggles with reading the defense and finding the open receivers. And he seems to be tailor made for this Vikings offense. So I'm with it. I feel like a guy like Sam Darnold, as soon as you buy into it and start expecting big things and put him in your lineup, that's when you're going to get burned. But
I mean, we
right
saw
now,
it.
like
We
you
saw
said,
it with
he's a
Derek
QB2.
Carr.
Yeah,
We saw it with
last
Derek
week.
Carr this week, right? And
Now
so
with Baker Mayfield this week too.
the difference is, though, at least with the Vikings, and we talked about this a lot with Sam Darnold in the preseason, was that we had seen the Vikings do this with other random quarterbacks, with Josh
Nick
Dobbs, and Nick
Mullins was averaging
Mullins,
almost 300 a game. Yeah.
and so like we kind of we were suspecting that this could happen, and now that it is, I'm I'm willing just to buy in on that. I want to ask you a question. Would you rather have rest of season CJ Stroud or Sam Darnold on your fantasy team? The
Mm,
fact that you have to think about it tells me everything I need to know,
yeah.
because 3 weeks ago, we all would have said CJ Stroud, no problem. But the fact that we are there tells me that I can go pick up Sam Darnold, who's still available in over 60% of leagues, plug him in, no problem, as my starting quarterback this season, and the offense should only get better. And I want to go ahead and trade some of these guys with the crazy name value. That's just where I'm at. There's so many holes in other positions on offense right now in fantasy football that I'd rather just I'll piece together. I'll duct tape a quarterback together with Sam Darnold. I'm good with that.
And I think that's it for me. Like, you're saying to pick up Sam Darnold, and I agree he should be picked up in all leagues. And he's not a guy that I'm saying like you have to plug in your QB spot, but I think he lands into that streamer discussion. And we talked about this
Yeah.
with Jeff just a couple weeks ago, if you remember, where we were kind of going through all the different quarterbacks, and I said there's really only like 7 guys that I consider to be like plug and play guys that you're not thinking twice about. Once you get outside of that top 7, I think all of these guys are in that streaming discussion, and I think Sam Darnold is there with CJ Stroud and Joe Burrow and Baker Mayfield and Derek Carr and a lot of the other guys that we know have high weekly upside. And you're kind of looking at it on a matchup basis. If Sam Darnold has a good matchup, he's absolutely going to find himself in the top 10 for quite a few weeks in our weekly rankings this season.
And what's crazy is that even when he hasn't had a great matchup, he's been really good.
Yeah.
He had San Francisco and Houston in back-to-back weeks, 2 defenses that looked like they were able to shut down any quarterback, and Sam Darnold was just going out there. All right, we've done too much on Sam Darnold. Let's move on. Next round here, round 3, picks 5 and 6. These are going to be the players that are available in at least 70% of leagues. Dave, who are you going with?
I'm going back to the well with Justin Fields, a guy who is currently undefeated in the NFL, 3-0 with the Pittsburgh Steelers, and he is playing very different football than we saw during his entire tenure in Chicago. I know there was much ado made about his first couple of weeks where they were really dumbing down the offense for him, and for lack of a better term, that's all I know how to say. They were dumbing down the offense. I mean, they were just letting him throw outside the numbers on really short routes, and they weren't letting him do much outside of that. And I'm sure you saw the jokes on social media and Twitter about how Justin Fields can't throw across the middle of the field. Well, threw across the middle of the field quite a bit yesterday and looked good doing it. Hit Calvin Austin on a nice little catch and run that went for a touchdown. Had multiple throws across the middle of the field. Of course, he did have one interception, his first turnover of the season, but he just looks like a completely different player right now. He has the lowest turnover rate of his career. He's got the lowest sack rate of his career. He is undefeated, as I mentioned. He's got the highest completion percentage of his year. But what has me buying into Justin Fields for fantasy is that he is averaging more rushing attempts per game than he did during his entire tenure in Chicago. He's averaging 9.1 rushing attempts per game, and he's doing that on half of the rushing efficiency that we've seen previously in his career. So we see that the passing is there now. We see that he's on a good offense with good playmakers. The rushing hasn't been there yet, but the rushing opportunities still are. So we kind of saw the boom game yesterday, and much of that came through the air. But I don't think we've really scratched the surface on Justin Fields' ceiling yet in this Steelers offense. He's going to have one of those games where he rushes for 150 plus yards. He's going to run a touchdown in, and then we're going to see one of those 30 plus point games. So I had Justin Fields inside my top 12 last week. He's going to be inside my top 10 this week. I don't think that he is a plug and play guy either, but like we talked about, that kind of streaming churn of Sam Darnold, Derek Carr, Baker Mayfield, Jared Goff, Brock Purdy, all these guys. I think Justin Fields fits right inside that discussion as a weekly streamer.
Yeah, I think this just continues to prove the point that some of these top quarterbacks that we were super excited about, or I don't even know that we were very excited about them. I think we really only wanted like the top five out there, right? But I think that some of those quarterbacks 6 through 12, it just really wasn't pretty. And I think this shows you that late round quarterback is still very much a thing. You've got Geno Smith and Justin
Mhm.
Fields and all these quarterbacks. I mean, Andy Dalton's back out here slinging passes, having the best quarterback performance by a Panthers quarterback in seasons now. Like it's nuts. And so I think that what I was saying with Sam Darnold and what you're saying with Justin Fields is that there's ability to move on from the guys that you may be
Yeah.
drafted and not get into that sunken cost fallacy with your quarterbacks.
Which we'll have to have a discussion about Anthony Richardson soon because we saw the
I was
ceiling
going
in
to
week
ask.
one, but oh man, was it brutal yesterday. Um that was a tough game to watch. I mean, Caleb Williams had his struggles, Anthony Richardson has his struggles, but that interception that Richardson threw in the end zone, I don't even know what he was trying to do. That was one of the worst interceptions I've ever seen. And yeah, the rushing upside is there, but definitely starting to panic a little bit about Richardson in fantasy this year.
Yeah, yeah, and I think that's kind of the same thing. And we're recording this ahead of the Commanders game tonight, but I think that's the same thing that a lot of people were worried about with Jaden Daniels as well, where there is this incredible rushing upside, but some of the passing upside just seems so limited. But it does seem like the Commanders are doing a better job of making simple plays and simple reads for Jaden
Mhm,
Daniels. Is actually already called out by Cam Taylor Britt, the corner for the defensive back for the Bengals, who he
mhm.
said the same thing about Xavier Worthy a week ago. And so it's going to be really interesting to see how these guys continue to develop. Like, there's so much talk about how these quarterbacks just need another year to develop. And Anthony Richardson, what does he have? It's something crazy since high school. It's like 17 starts between high school
Oh
and the
yeah.
NFL now.
Yeah.
It's just an awful number. This is a guy that like really let him sit. Like does it really hurt the team that much to put in Joe Flacco right now and just and admit I don't know. I don't know if he needs to sit.
I
I don't
think
know if he
after
needs to be out there and playing more.
missing his rookie season to injury and then getting benched in year 2, I mean, they'd essentially be burning half of his rookie contract, which kinda negates the whole, idea of why you wanna draft a rookie and build around him, so
I
I get what you're
guess
saying. I think he
you
definitely needs
drafted him
some sort
knowing.
of reset.
Yeah, I mean, they drafted him knowing that he needed time to develop. I guess I'll still stick with the, sink or swim, baptism by fire thing. Like, just let him keep playing. Let
Oh,
him
see,
keep
and I'm
playing.
the complete opposite. I think like one of my biggest takes after what we've seen over the last couple of years, I am going to become that guy that is saying like draft your rookie in round 1 and sit him for a year. Like it is crazy the expectations that we're putting on these quarterbacks so early that, for every CJ Stroud who turns it on immediately as a rookie, we have 10 guys that are just flaming out in 2 or 3 seasons because they're putting the entire weight of like the Chicago Bears, for instance, 100 plus years of struggles are on Caleb Williams' shoulders right now. You can't tell me that just a year of sitting on the sidelines doing the Patrick Mahomes, the Jordan Love, the Aaron Rodgers, the Tom Brady. You can't tell me that that isn't a proven recipe for success. Yet teams continue to just throw their guys out there in week 1, and it doesn't really work out all that often.
Yeah, I think it's just that owners are getting way more impatient. They want returns
Fans
on their
too.
picks. Yeah, fans, they want returns. Coaches, their jobs are on the hot seat so fast is that they
Yep.
can't even do it anymore. They can't bench these guys for a year. They can't let them develop. And then you end up with guys like Sam Darnold coming back years and years later and Geno Smith years and years later that end up being good. It's
Baker
nuts.
Mayfield.
Yep.
Yeah,
Yeah, it's
I'm
nuts.
saying
All right.
I don't think there's anything wrong with, just developing on the sideline. We expect way too much from these rookies way too early. I already know that once the season ends, I will be doing a deep dive into the benefits of sitting your rookie quarterback.
It's interesting because, like, I wonder how beneficial it is for a guy who doesn't have starts. Like, there's a difference of getting used to the NFL game and getting used to the playbook, but for a guy that just simply doesn't have starts, that
Mhm.
one intrigues me. It's a little different. He doesn't actually have a lot of the experience. Anyways, we got way off track there. Let's go to my pick here. I'm gonna go with Jalen Tolbert. And this is just there's not a whole lot that's really out there that looks good or that looks appetizing on the waiver wire, especially when you get to this sort of availability level. And so, like, I skipped all the way down to Jalen Tolbert, who's available in 89% of leagues. I'm not even doing the 70% thing because you look around and there's not that many players that are tied to good offenses that have roles that they've already carved out here. Jalen Tolbert was a guy, like, I think we were just all a little too early on. We were waiting for the breakout to happen. And you know what? He was still able to show that he's a part of this offense, even with Brandon Cooks out there, even with Jake Ferguson back. This wasn't just something where, oh, Ferguson is out and Tolbert got the targets. The Cowboys right now, they look lost. They look like they don't have an identity. They cannot run the ball. They have no idea who's going to be in their backfield week to week. It started off as Zeke. Now it's moved to Rico Dowdle. We're getting Deuce Vaughn in there as well. For me, the thing is that I just want to get players tied to good offenses, or at least perceived good off, potentially good offenses. Dak Prescott, we talked about him all offseason as a quarterback who every single year has basically been really good for fantasy. He's going to throw touchdowns. And that's exactly what happened with Jalen Tolbert this last week. He caught a touchdown. He's been seeing his target share growing and growing and growing. He's out on the field a bit more. And the schedule looks actually pretty good for him going forward. He's got the Giants, he's got the Lions, Atlanta, Philly, Washington, the Giants again. Like, there's a pretty good schedule out here for him. Even when they go up against some of the tougher defenses, he's never going to be the guy that's getting covered out there for Dallas. He's always going to be the third option or maybe even fourth option for Dak Prescott. But this team, it seems like being third or fourth option on this team can still be fantasy relevant because of how often they're going to have to pass. They have absolutely no running attack here, Dave.
And their defense isn't as good as we had expected either. This
Oh,
is a lot of big playmakers on this defense, and it just isn't really coming together this year. So, I just want to invest in this Dallas Cowboys passing attack as much as possible. Trying to buy low on CD Lamb after a quiet game yesterday if I can. Brandon Cooks, hasn't looked especially great the last couple of weeks, but I'll get him as well. And Jalen Tolbert is the guy that's sitting out there on waivers on most leagues that you could pick up for free. And I talked about Jalen Tolbert last week after seeing his role grow a little bit, but now it grew even more going into week 3. So again, we talk about a lot these receivers coming from really small schools. That was Jalen Tolbert. Where did he come from, Alfredo? Do you remember? It was like South Alabama or
South
something like.
Alabama. Yes, sir.
Yeah, yeah, small college, and sometimes it takes guys a couple of years to develop from a small school like that into a NFL caliber player, and I think we're seeing it now. This is a guy who dealt with some injuries through his first couple of years, had some intense target competition, and now it's kind of opening up, and we're seeing that he can play at the NFL level. So talked about him last week. We'll talk about him again this week, and if he is under 70% rostership going into week 4, into week 5, we'll probably talk about him again next week.
Yep. One more again. All right, let's go.
Pick him
Last
up so
round
we don't
here.
have to talk about him again.
Yeah, yeah. I really don't like talking about the same things over and over. All right, let's go to our final round here. Dave, these are players that are available in 80+% of leagues.
Emmanuel Wilson had himself a pretty nice game. Another guy that we talked about last week saying to pick up. We saw that Marshawn Lloyd landed on IR, meaning he's not going to be back for at least 4 games. Emmanuel Wilson got some run late in the game yesterday, but he has looked explosive with the touches that he has had over the last couple of weeks, and hasn't been any like crazy production yet. But we did see yesterday, 14 touches. That's as many as Josh Jacobs had, and Emmanuel Wilson went for 85 yards and a touchdown. He had that nifty little catch and run on a score where the explosiveness was just so apparent. Like, you don't need to be a scout or anything like that to just see, like, when this guy gets the ball in his hands, he looks like he's shot out of a cannon. So Kind of reminds me a little bit in a way of Jaleel McLaughlin, a guy who came out last year as an undrafted guy and was getting some touches. And every time he did get a touch, you just couldn't help but notice how slippery he was, that he was just fast and good at avoiding contact and breaking tackles. And that's what we're seeing from Emmanuel Wilson. So Josh Jacobs is clearly the guy here. But I'm wondering maybe they don't want to keep shouldering him with 30 plus touches every single game like they did to start the first couple of weeks. And last week we saw him reel back his workload a little bit and get Emmanuel Wilson involved. So again, this is very similar to what I was saying earlier when I was talking about Braelon Allen. Obviously, Emmanuel Wilson's going to be a lot cheaper than Braelon Allen and Bucky Irving, but kind of in a similar position where, there might be some weekly value here where you can plug him in a flex spot in your deep leagues during bye weeks, but really it's just the contingent upside. Like he has carved out his role as the RB2 with Marshawn Lloyd expected to come back in 3 to 4 weeks. We don't know if he's going to be able to regain that title. Marshawn Lloyd might be more of a play that we're looking at in 2025. We see that often where rookies get hurt and just never really find their footing. So Emmanuel Wilson could have some value for the rest of this season. And he's a guy available in almost every league that you can probably pick up, for a couple of bucks and probably don't have to pay much more than that in your waiver wire this week.
The Packers are just awesome right now, man. The
Yeah.
Packers are awesome. Matt LaFleur has done such a good job with this team. And it's not even like Malik Willis just has these incredible weapons around him. It's I mean, he's going with virtually a bunch of unproven guys, the guys like Christian Watson, who really everyone's still waiting for the breakout. And then you've got a whole bunch of Emmanuel Wilson behind him in the backfield there. There's not enough can be said with how good that Packers offense looks. So yeah, this is another one where like I'm just willing to grab players on good offenses with opportunities to score points.
Yeah, and did you see that video? Totally getting off on tangents because that's what we do, and I apologize.
Mhm.
But did you see the video of Malik Willis where a reporter asked him, like, how excited are you for this revenge game against the Tennessee Titans? Did you see that or no, Alfredo?
No.
Oh, and Malik Willis just gave, like, the best answer, and he was just, like, shocked at the question, and he was like, "Revenge game?" He's like, "What are you talking about?" He's like, "Those people, like, they gave me my opportunity, like, I wanna be in the NFL if it wasn't for that organization drafting me." He's like, "A revenge game?" He's like, "I always got paid on time. I've got no ill will towards them." He's like, "They're a great organization. They took care of me, and, like, I'm blessed to be in the NFL because of the Tennessee Titans," and man, he's just such an easy guy to root for. The Bears fan in me hates that the Packers always find these just like great quarterbacks who, I like to watch on the football field. And now they did it again with Malik Willis. And yeah, it's a band aid. They're probably only playing him, probably not even into next week, but he just looks so good. And I'm hoping that now, with this couple of games that he had as kind of his audition here in Green Bay, I hope he gets another opportunity somewhere because we know he's got the skill set. We know he's got the opportunity, and it's just kind of been a dumpster fire in Tennessee for the last couple of years.
Look at how bad everything is in Miami right now. Tua Tagovailoa is out. Skylar
You take
Thompson
Malik
looked
Willis right now
horrendous.
over
I would take
Tim
anyone
Boyle.
over what
Did
Yeah.
you see the stat going around today,
I
Alfredo? The Dolphins are the only team in the NFL that has not held
had a
a lead.
lead.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's hard out
Yeah.
here. I'm sorry, man.
They have less points scored this season than the Carolina Panthers, who
Ugh,
have already benched their quarterback.
ugh.
Yeah.
Sorry, buddy.
Yeah. Yeah, it's sad times here. We're down bad. And that brings us to our last pick here in the week 4 waiver wire draft. I'm going to go with, and this is so interesting. They've not changed the name. The pronunciation of this name was sending me during the broadcast. Tyler Badie,
Yeah,
because
yeah.
forever I
That's how I
thought it was
clean my butt.
Badie.
Yeah.
Yep. Yeah.
Yeah, I was
Hey,
pretty
you know
surprised. I
what?
was like, "Who is that? I've never heard of this guy before." And then I looked it up. I was like, "Wait, that's Tyler Badie. What are you talking
Good
about?"
flex. Good flex, man. You have a bidet?
I do, yeah. Keep it
Nice.
super clean.
Nice flex, dude. That's great. Yeah, I need to
Yeah,
get a bidet. I need to get a
yeah.
bidet.
It's a
Yeah.
good investment. Saves the world too. You're, not chopping down trees, and, you get the added benefit of a nice clean butt.
Aren't we the only country that, like, doesn't really have them kinda standard everywhere? We're the only country that just mashes paper against our anus,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
Yeah, look at
It's a
us.
game changer, dude, I'm telling you. You don't even need
Big win.
like, it used to be like rich people, you had like a standalone bidet next to your toilet. Now you just get a bidet attachment on Amazon for like $60, plug it into the water hose. It's cold though. take some getting used to. It'll wake you up in the morning, I'll tell you that.
As I just do love that caveat. You're like, it's cold though. So
Yeah. I actually got a
anyway,
hot water bidet, but it takes like 30 seconds to warm up, and like that's yeah. Ooh. All right, enough bidet talk.
I mean,
Let's talk
for
more
the
about
most part, you're kind of most people are just sitting there for an extra 30 seconds anyways, just
uh
scrolling on their phone. All right.
yeah, not getting blasted by ice cold water for 30 seconds though.
Right in the anus. I'm glad I was able to work
All
that
right.
word in twice here
Back
today.
to Tyler Bidet.
Bidet. I really want him to be a thing because I just want to keep saying bidet every week. But I'm gonna be real here. Javonte Williams looks cooked. Week 1, he looked fine. And it just seems like every time he gets the ball handed off to him in that backfield, he's got nowhere to go. Nowhere to go. He can't make guys miss anymore. It's looking bad. And I'm gonna take the L on that one, man. He looks awful here throughout the season. But it's not like the Broncos offense has looked very good. Jaleel McLaughlin saw his role start to shrink this week as well. He did have the one impressive touchdown run where he was able to make all the defenders miss, put him on ice skates, and just like get into the end zone there on a sweep toss play. But it was just seeing Tyler Bidet walk in to the Broncos backfield and just be able to absolutely crush with his opportunity. Dave, he had 9 carries, ends up leading the team in carries, goes for 70 yards on the ground, just a 19% snap share. This is another guy who I think that if he continues just to keep performing like this, it's the most Sean Payton thing ever to be like, you know what, this guy, the new name guy, you're my new running back one. This is what we're gonna do because it's driving me insane that not only can we not figure out who's playing well for this Broncos team or who's playing the biggest role, we don't even know when or if the Broncos are going to be good. They go out there and they beat the Tampa Bay Buccaneers in week 3, who looked absolutely unbeatable. And all of a sudden, Bo Nix looks like he can play in the NFL after we were all clowning him for after the first 2 weeks. I'm I'm just willing to buy into the mystery box at this point. I'll throw $1 of my fab onto Tyler Bidet. One, just because the name is cool and there's a lot of potential with fantasy football names, but also give me a running back that's going to make plays. With how bad the running back scene has gotten in fantasy, sure, why not? Throw $1 of your fab on Tyler Bidet.
Yeah, I had high hopes for him when he was drafted, because that was right after the J.K. Dobbins injury, and he's got some speed, and I was hoping that he'd be able to do something with the Baltimore Ravens, and unfortunately never made it off of their practice squad. But now it seems like he's finding a role here in Denver. We haven't seen too much of him. Played a little bit in 2022, didn't play it all last year, but
Yeah,
I mean, this is just dude, Sean Payton, like his personnel utilization is so hard to get a read on.
right.
I wanted to make a joke yesterday, and I didn't want to come off in poor taste because obviously Javonte Williams picked up a little injury. We don't know how serious that's going to be, but like we thought that we understood how this backfield was going to shake out. That Javonte Williams was going to get the early down work. Jaleel McLaughlin was going to come in and get the third down snaps. Both of these guys are going to be heavily used in the receiving game. We thought Troy Franklin was going to be the deep threat. We thought Cortland Sutton was going to be the guy across the middle. But instead, we've got like Lil Jordan Humphrey is their wide receiver one, and Tyler Bidet is in here carving out a huge role for himself. We were excited about Greg Dulcich, and instead, it's still Adam Troutman is effectively playing as the tight end one here. It is just mind-numbing personnel usage so far that we've seen out of Denver. My fear is that you go out and you get Tyler Bidet, and he just goes back to the practice squad next week. I don't really know what to
Yeah,
expect. But yeah, Javonte Williams hasn't looked good. Jaleel McLaughlin has shown a little bit of bursts here and there. But with Sabaje Perine off of the roster now, it's open for Bidet to carve out a bigger role. So absolutely worth a pickup in your deeper leagues, just to kind of see what happens going forward.
Tyler Bidet is here to clean the Broncos
No,
backfield.
no, 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 no. Don't do that.
All right, that's all of our wide receiver, or excuse me, waiver wire picks here through our first 4 rounds. And Dave, is there anyone that's like an honorable mention? Maybe someone else that's in like that 80 to 90% range that we didn't mention to here today that you're just like, you know what, I kind of like him too off waiver wires.
Cole Kmet is definitely worth checking out. He's not, in 90 plus, but showing that Kmet's still available in about 65% of leagues, and currently the tight end 3 in scoring. And there was so much concern about how Kmet would be able to carve out a role in this offense. Well, Keenan Allen's been hurt, and Kmet is still plenty involved in the offense, so he is definitely worth a pickup. But for some of your deeper leagues, I like what I've seen from Michael Wilson so far. He is having a strong year two. Still doing a lot of things that we saw in year one. Making strong contested catches, just doing it on a much better offense now. So definitely like him. And then Trey Tucker is another guy. Has seen his role growing a little bit, much like you talked about earlier. Who was it you were talking about where we were
Jalen
saying
Tolbert.
that they just have to throw nonstop? Yeah, Jalen Tolbert. We're going to see a lot of that from the Raiders, where they don't have a great defense and don't have a strong run game, and they're going to have to throw a lot. And I think Trey Tucker is going to just kind of volume his way into a top 40 season at the end of the year. So Trey Tucker and Cole Kmet are the two honorable mentions that I'll throw out. Do you have any other guys that you're looking at, Alfredo?
Yeah, I mean, I'm intrigued in Roschon Johnson just because
Yeah.
DeAndre Swift has been so bad, and Roschon ends up having this passing down role for a Bears team that looks like they might be trailing in quite a few games, or at least being competitive in most of their games, right? And
I would
he's
say
got the size.
Roschon got touches on the opening drive. Like, it wasn't like he
Yeah,
just came in late. Like,
which is
they
it doesn't make
clearly.
sense. Why do you have him inactive the first 2 games, and then all of a sudden Travis Homer has a finger injury, and you're like, "Let's give this guy some touches in the first drive," even though we weren't willing to even carry him on the active roster a
It's
week.
exactly
It
what they
just
did with Foreman a few years ago, if you remember. Foreman was inactive for, like, the first 6 weeks, and then he's finally activated, and they're like, "Oh, yeah, and by the way, he's our starter too." And it's like, "Wait, what?" Like, it's I don't know, man. The Bears.
Yeah, the Bears. The other one I was looking at here was Demario Douglas, who
Yep.
it's kind of hard to buy in on anyone that's on the Patriots, but I think we're probably going to see Drake May sooner rather than
Mhm.
later. I don't know if that's a good thing. Like we talked about this with these rookie quarterbacks, that offensive line is brutal, and Jacoby Brissett is getting destroyed. But it does seem like Drake May's got a little bit more of that mobility. He did seem to move the ball a little bit better for the Patriots, and when he was in, he was targeting Demario Douglas quite
Yep.
a bit. So like that's the guy that I'd probably lean towards. And these are all like Emmanuel Wilson, Jalen Tolbert, Tyler Badie, Demario Douglas, all these players that we've listed here. These are guys that are going to be available in 80 plus or 90 plus percent of leagues, most of them. So you can go and drop a couple of bucks of fab on these guys. I don't know that a lot of these guys are going to end up being clear cut starters for your fantasy team. I think really the only guys we're looking at that could be starters are players like Braelon Allen, Bucky Irving, Wan'Dale Robinson, the quarterbacks we listed here, Sam Darnold and Justin Fields. Dave, we glossed over one guy really quick before we get out of here. Alexander Mattison, because
Uh,
I don't like it either. I
he's
don't
getting
like it
all
either.
the high value work, though. Like, he is getting
It's
all of the
crazy.
goal line and passing down work, and Zamir White has just been not good.
Samir White looks so bad. He
Mhm.
does. I tweeted this earlier. When has it worked out for a player when they've gained weight? A running back. We always hear that about running backs that
Player
oh
in
he's
general,
gained.
I can't
I
think of
mean,
anybody.
I think the only time, and it was pointed out to me, was Devon Achan, but that's because he was already like 170 pounds and he went up to like
Yeah.
180. So we can relax. But Zamir White was already a big dude who got bigger. He doesn't look explosive out on the
But he
field.
was
He's not
also a
making
speed guy.
plays.
He's got, like, 99th percentile size adjusted speed. So then he puts
Right.
on all that, like, that's what made him so valuable is he could break one tackle at the line of scrimmage and then be off to the races. Now he breaks that one tackle, and then he just gets brought down by a linebacker.
I mean, that's also like the thing that gets lost in the sauce too when they do these timings, right? It's like your time speed isn't always the exact same as your game speed. These guys really train for it. They drop a ton of weight, they go and run the 40, and it's a 4.4 when that's not really what they ever ran in a game. It's more like a 4.6 when they add the 10, 15 pounds back on. And I'm not excited about Alexander Madison, but if you're saying that the Raiders, like you said with Trey Tucker, are going to be passing a lot, and Madison is the guy who's getting these passing downs, I'm willing to throw a few dollars on him. I
Yeah.
hate it, but I'll do it.
And you know that Antonio Pierce is just going to come out in a press conference tomorrow and be like, "We just need to get Zamir White the ball more, 20 plus
He's a
touches
bold faced
next
liar.
week," and everybody's going to plug Zamir White into their lineups again. And Alexander Madison is going to get the touchdown and the passing work, and Zamir White's going to give you 4.2 fantasy points. Like, it's been, um, yeah, like this Raiders team, man, I hate it. Like, even Devontae Adams didn't get much done yesterday. Brock Bowers had a quiet game. We finally thought that, like, hey, Gardner Minshew can actually steer the ship, and there's some playmakers on here, and we're feeling good about him. And then we're like, oh, that's right, Gardner Minshew's Gardner Minshew.
Wrong. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's gross. Anyways, bueno, we have gone through, Dave, 12 different waiver wire options for people here. Actually, no, 13. Look at that. 13. We still hit 13. We dove into it pretty in depth. We gave you a little recap of what went down here in week 3 and what to expect going forward. We're going to be back again tomorrow with special guest Victoria Geary as we are going to take a look at the rest of season wide receiver rankings. Then obviously throughout the rest of the week, we're going to be giving you our starts of the week. We're going to be giving you the trade targets to look at. And as always, we got the Sunday morning live start and sit Q&A with Joey Wright, Jagger May, Jeff Bell, Adam Hutchison, the whole gang over here at Football Guys. So make sure you are subscribed to the channel. And if you have any questions for this week about the waiver wire, drop those in the comments down below. And as always, we want to thank you guys for watching and listening all the way through. For myself, for Dave Kluge, we'll see you next time. Adios.